you almost need to take a burn the boats mentality, right? That this is the only way. If I'm going to do this, I'm not looking back, and failure is not an option
Right.
within reason. Otherwise, your very first setback might preclude you from ever getting on that path again. And little did you know, your very next venture or your very next quarter might be the one that gets you over the hump to success.
Financial independence,
freedom,
financial picture,
independent financially,
financial future,
financial freedom and wealth,
financial independence.
Get your fill, financial independence and long life. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Get Your Fill, Financial Independence and Long Life, where we explore ways to achieve those two goals, because long life is not as much fun if you don't have financial independence. So that's why I'm really happy that Travis Freeman is with us today. He is a certified financial planner to affluent entrepreneurs and executives, so you can aspire to be one of his clients. He's the author of 2 books, including his newest release, The Fortune of Youth. After experiencing food stamps, not food champs, food stamps as a child, he became obsessed with the power of money and now has a passion for showing people how to create financial success. Travis, thanks for being with us today.
You bet, Christine. I'm a big believer in Phil, so I think you and I are going to get along just fine.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's not just one, right? And that's what we were kind of talking about before we started the recording. That there's no great, I don't know, I don't think anybody's going to applaud you for living till 102 if you're kind of sleeping in the streets in your bathrobe, you know? I mean, you really having enough money to have a comfortable old age is pretty important.
Mm-hmm. And as you know, it takes a lot of planning and being intentional with your health and your life and what you do every day and all the things you preach to people.
Yeah, absolutely. But like the big thing, I think, so tell me, I'm not going to tell you, you're being interviewed. What do you think is required for somebody to go from being on food stamps to be financially independent?
Sure. So we are blessed to live in a country, for those of your listeners that are in a free market economy like the US, blessed to live in a place where the sky is the limit, right? Money is infinite. You can create infinite amounts of money. You can be wealthier than Elon Musk. Time is not. Time is finite. So someone can go from being on food stamps regardless of their age, but the younger they are, the more potential they have to grow wealth. And it's a combination of accepting risk and having a mindset on where you're going to be, right? That's what it takes. Someone years ago said, Travis, the CEO of the companies that you usually see, those CEOs didn't just stumble into that position. They started at a company and they saw themselves there, right? For those that rose up in the ranks. Yeah. They had a mentality, right? They saw themselves in the office and they put themselves there. Exactly. And that's what it takes. Anybody can do it.
So visualization, mindset, and I suppose because your clients basically are already wealthy, you don't need to coach them in changing their mindset and changing, but are there any sort of challenges like that come up? And maybe, an interesting thing maybe to talk about if you want to, is inherited wealth and how that mindset might differ from somebody who earns that money themselves and becomes a millionaire in their, the first generation wealthy person in their family.
Sure. So inherited wealth is so interesting to me because now most of my clients are first gen. They've created it themselves, right? They bootstrapped a business. They created something. But for those folks I do have that received the family business, received the wealth, some of them have a mentality that's almost identical to their parents, right? They saw their parents struggle. They saw what it took to get there. Yeah. By the time you get to third generation wealth, there's a reason that wealth usually doesn't last, right? The mentality's different. They didn't see it. They saw, maybe what my kids are seeing, right? They're
how to spend it.
I mean, I didn't grow up in a country club environment. I didn't have nice cars. My folks didn't have nice cars, but my kids are seeing all those things. So I certainly hope that their kids don't blow it all one day. But I enjoy personally working with the folks that have created it, but I don't fault the people that inherited it because some of them are really good about it. I do also meet the folks that are clueless about how to treat it. They don't respect it as much, and it usually doesn't last.
Yeah. Yeah, money's an interesting thing, right? There's the power of money, and that's what it is, right? Money's energy. Money is it's a tool, but don't we seem to sort of mystify it, right? We seem to like make it this thing that you have to deserve it, right? You have to be a certain whatever, I can't because of who I am, because of where I came from, I can't be wealthy. I mean, I guess it just gets back to mindset, but
Mm.
I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm really in a philosophical mood today, so I apologize for that. We can talk like brass tacks. We can talk
Well,
about strategies.
ironically, on that, something that I see people struggle with, and I struggle with, is so as you said in my bio, my folks went through a long, painful divorce, and we went from an average middle class or lower middle class family down to being on food stamps with living with my mom. And it didn't last forever, but I became infatuated with money because at 8-ish years old, I watched our family transform a lot. These things we had and now we don't have, right? Well, as I went to college, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I started my career at 19. I actually was professionally licensed at 19 years old.
Wow.
And it doesn't mean that I had some vision at that point. I did have a little luck and stumbled into some opportunities. Didn't like what I was doing, switched. And by the time I graduated, I had 3 different companies I worked at, including professional licensure. I knew I didn't want to work for a person or a company. I started my own, and through some luck and perseverance, my wife and I are doing very well today. And we have a couple different businesses that we've started over the years. And the reason I'm telling you this is I struggled for a while with even being able to show some of my successes to my family. I was ashamed of it.
Yeah.
And I know I shouldn't be. I actually wrote about it in the book a bit, about the journey I went through to get over that shame, because I know my family's happy with me, but they still don't really know. I mean, if they knew what we really have and how much we make, I do worry that people in my family or circle of friends would look at us differently,
Yeah.
Um, so it goes both ways. I mean, it's okay to be philosophical right now.
But you're right. I mean, that is something that I think a lot of people struggle with when they come, even from a middle class sort of environment. And then all of a sudden, because it's a thing, I had lunch with 2 folks yesterday, and one of the gentlemen's really successful. He just sold his business for millions of dollars, and he gets calls every single day with people looking for money. It's just like, what's that about? You know what I mean? That's not fair. I mean, I suppose you just like, oh, this guy has money. Let's go get it. And you just feel like all of a sudden you're that other, and you're the one who's going to have to be doling out handouts and stuff like that. And that's not, you shouldn't feel bad about having a flashy car. You shouldn't feel bad. Not that I don't know if you have a flashy car, you probably don't, but maybe in the garage, right?
I'm a car guy, and I always pay cash, by the way. So.
Awesome. Awesome. But yeah, I mean, there is that, like, how can you, so this is bringing it a little bit back to reality. How can you aspire to have money when you're cursing that person who just drove by in a BMW? And that happens. Like, people are like, oh, that person drives that car, they must be a jerk. Like, well, but you also want to be that guy. So how is that? That's not a compatible mindset.
That is a scarcity mindset, right?
Yeah,
If
exactly.
if someone's gut instinct is jealousy or unhealthy admiration, or say that person doesn't deserve it, and there's sort of this entitlement mentality comes in, kick that to the curb. I mean, kick that mindset to the curb, because it will not serve somebody well, as you know.
Yeah.
Instead of having the scarcity mindset, it is the abundance mindset. I remember always thinking, when I met somebody who was financially successful, but maybe they didn't know a topic as well as I knew it, or I was just surprised by their background that they were able to find that kind of success. It was not a judgmental thing. I just thought, wow, that's neat. If that person can do it, why the hell can't I?
Exactly.
Right? And it was a motivating factor. Now, ironically, you talk about the flashy car. I love the new Corvettes. The body style is just absolutely beautiful. They look like a Ferrari.
Yeah,
And
they
for
do.
my 40th birthday, I wanted to buy one. And my wife and I had saved up the cash. We were ready to buy the Corvette. And I told her when my birthday came around that I didn't want to do it because I was afraid that the kids would get the wrong idea. We have identical boys who are 10, and I didn't want them to start thinking that this is a normal life. And again, this probably comes back to just the shame part of me coming out a little bit, but it'll happen one day. I'm going to buy the Corvette, and we've got nice cars, but we are making intentional decisions so that our family can live a healthy, happy life, and that I can hopefully instill those lessons in our kids,
Yeah. Yeah, because you talk to people who have wealth and they say, yeah, okay, I came from nothing, especially people first generation wealth. I came from nothing, but you could strip me bare and put me in any city in the world and I will be rich again within a year because I've got the mindset. I understand what it takes to do that. And until you can celebrate someone else's success, I've talked to people who have been very successful within a company, for example, a really successful salesperson. And like, they know I'm successful, but maybe one person, and actually this, I think, oh my God, I'm having a mental block. But anyway, one of the famous speakers, he tells a story of like, he worked in a company and this one sales guy was getting all the business. He was really successful and things like that. Brian Tracy, total
Okay.
brain fart. But yeah. And so Brian went to him and said, hey, what do you do that's different from what all these other guys do? And he said, I've worked in this company for, 10 years, and you're the first person who's ever asked me. The other guys are all cursing them by the water cooler, like, oh, he gets all the Briggs, he's so lucky, whatever. And Brian Tracy said, how do you do it? And he's like, oh, well, I do XYZ. And so Brian Tracy went off and built a whole career and became a sales coach based on just being not afraid or not intimidated or not like whatever, to ask somebody who's successful to say, hey, how did you do it? And you
I
don't even
love
have
it.
to ask them if you're shy, right? Just go to the library because a lot of successful people wrote a book about how they did it. But I don't know.
Yeah, there are thousands of books published every day.
Yes.
I mean, literally, there are thousands every day. There's so much information out there. But yeah, just targeting the person who you might help envy on a healthy level. That's
Yeah.
great. People should do more of that.
Yeah. So tell us about your book, speaking of books.
Sure. So the Fortunate Youth, given what I do, I work with a lot of folks that are maybe 40s, many of them are in their 50s to 70s, and they have obviously found success. These folks have millions to upwards of $100 million of net worth, right? And what I did is I said, look, I know what I did to find success. I have looked at all these other folks that have found success. What could I teach to a younger person? It's like 20s, 30s, maybe 40s. What can I teach to a younger person if they want to reach this success one day? And keeping in mind, as you know, success doesn't have to mean having $50 million.
Right.
Everybody has their own definition of success. So how do you find it so that you don't go through life and all of a sudden you wake up one day and you go, oh, now I'm interested in doing these things, but you've lost all this time, right?
Yeah.
So an ideal person is someone getting out of school and starting their lives and reading it and implementing even half of what's in this book. I'll give you one of my favorite parts, Christine.
Okay.
If somebody gets out of school, usually they're looking for the highest paid gig that they can find, right? Well, I encourage them to actually look for the highest growth path that they can find, which is maybe not the right salary. If
Right.
someone at 25 finds a salary at $48,000 and they're going to get 4% inflation adjustments a year, right? Nothing crazy, 4%.
Yeah.
Or they can find a job at 70 grand a year, but buy the apartment that they want, or, rent the apartment they want, buy the car they want, but they're only going to get 2% a year. The person at the lower salary will end up making almost $100,000 more a year by the time they're retired. And that crossover point happens in their mid 40s.
Wow.
It is not about the money that you're going to be making tomorrow. It is the path that you're going to put yourself on for the rest of your life that will allow you to have the things that you want, have the special doctors, the healthiest food, the gym membership, right? So you can take care of your mind and your body and have literally everything you want.
Yeah. And if you love that job, that slightly lower paying job, you're going to put more into it. You're going to be more excited. You're going to be more, right? You're going to be a superstar and you're probably going to get more promotions and you know what I mean? And you're going to live a happier life anyway. So that's even a better reason or even another reason to choose that path, to look for something that you really what's my potential here? Am I starting off at the bottom and now I can grow and evolve and learn more things and be more engaged and excited in my job, or am I going to be a pencil pusher, right? The same crap job right?
Right. Yeah.
It's all in the mind.
Right. Abundance mindset.
So when you sit down with people, so how does it differ for you when you're helping a client who has already established wealth, who is already successful? How does it differ for you sitting down with them and helping them to create a plan than maybe the plan that you created for yourself when you were coming from not so much?
Sure. So in situations where someone might have a couple $1 million and a certain lifestyle that they like, there's a lot of planning on preserving that lifestyle for the rest of their lives, right? Maybe they retire at 60 and they're going to live till their early 90s. All these Monte Carlo simulations, a lot of tax planning. How do we reduce costs over time? It's more traditional long-term financial planning. When you get into families that have tens of millions of dollars, then it transforms not into how do we make sure this lasts the rest of your life? I mean, I don't even need a calculator for some of these folks based on the way they live to tell them you're going to die with a ton of money. So what do you want to do with it?
Yeah.
For the time that you have left? And that might be generational wealth tax planning. It might be starting a family foundation, really helping some nonprofits. We do a lot of complex trust work, right? So how do they leave their mark both while they're living and when they're gone one day? And that it's a totally different conversation. It's a lot of fun, and I like
Yeah.
doing both.
Yeah. When you first started, did you start right away working with very wealthy people?
No, I wish. I talked to anybody that could fog a mirror and had $1 in their pocket. I mean, I was living in my parents' house, and I don't think I made my first dollar for 5 months. It was terrible. I mean, I was working 70 plus hours a week. And then by the end of the first year, I averaged out how many hours I worked and then what I made. I think I made like $1.70 an hour my first year. Um, so no, it did not start that way because I didn't have any natural network of wealthy friends or family, right?
Right.
But I did find a niche, treated people well. Unfortunately, I did learn by mistakes. I didn't really have a mentor to help me through these things. But after about 3 years, I hired a part-time assistant and then a full-time assistant and then a second full-time person, a third full-time person. And luckily it has grown from there.
Yeah. But when you made this transition, because I feel like this is an important thing that happens to people when they've started their own business. At a certain point, you say, I'm going to focus on the 3% of my business that's going to bring me the majority of my income. So I'm not going to work with just anybody anymore. Not, no, some guy in the street who's, trying to save for whatever to pay off his credit card isn't going to be my ideal client. I'm going to identify that I've got the skill set, I'm worthy, and I'm going to now choose to work with a clientele that you so like it's like 10xing your business. Like I'm not going to 10x my business by doing 10 times more people because I don't have the time, right? I need to focus on the people that are going to give me 10 times more volume or more revenue. I feel like that's got to be sort of a big mindset shift. Or did it just happen by mistake?
No, it was intentional, but really hard. I mean, unlike my wife's business, she patented this beauty device that it's like a spa quality device you can use at home, right? She could scale that thing worldwide and just hire more employees, right? In a service-based business, accounting, legal, finance, it's relationships, right? And you can only reasonably have about 100 relationships in this business. So if I'm fixed, aside from my employees that they can have relationships too. If
Yeah.
it's me, I'm fixed at 100, right? So how in the world do I grow unless all 100 are growing?
Yes.
There have been a couple points in my career where I had to say goodbye to folks, and there were tears, not just from them, but for me too, because
Yeah.
these were folks that hired me really early on. They trusted me, they helped me get to where I was, and it's just so hard. And I had to sit back and go, what would I do if this was purely a business decision? to look out for my employees, myself, and my family.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that got me through the tears, frankly. And I'm not kidding about that. And a lot of people in my industry and in any service business, the emotional toll that takes on having to make that business decision holds them back from growth.
Yeah.
But some people have also just decided, I want so badly to avoid that emotional toll that I'm just going to fix my lifestyle on what I have, and I'm happy with it. And that's great too. That's great too. I did strive for more, and there was a cost to it. There was an emotional cost to it, but financially, it's helped my family.
Yeah, I have some friends who made the decision, they work with companies and they're like, well, wait a minute. There are actually, there are 100 companies that will be my ideal client. And rather than wasting my time and it's a square peg kind of thing. So I'm just trying to get this business. Anybody, just come on and I'll adapt myself to working with you. And actually, once you decide these are the people who I can service the best, and these are the people who are also the most successful in the niche that I've created, then you're just like, okay. And now you can focus on, like, you can become better at the trusts, and you can become better at the wealth planning and helping people to do these certain things, because it's not just one client who does that. It's not just, there's just one guy. I've got this really one, high net worth individual, and they need more, but I just don't have time to learn all the stuff I need to learn, right? You just made a decision like, I'm going to be great at this. And it's going to help me. I'm going to be better at helping them. And then they're going to be more philanthropic, and they're going to help people. And it just becomes a really beautiful circle. But the head has to change first.
Yeah, you got it. That's right.
I'm doing all the talking. Why don't you say? I'm sorry,
No, you're doing
Jeff.
great. You're doing great.
I don't know what happened to me today. Usually I just sit quietly and let the guests do all the talking. So I apologize. I hope you feel like you're getting
I
your money's
told you
worth
you and I would
if
be
you
on the
will.
same page with this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, ultimately, if you have any listeners who have a business, whether it's service or otherwise, and they're at a roadblock on growth, right? Maybe it does come down to that tough business decision to maybe cut an employee that isn't working out or cut some customers that aren't working out. Ultimately, though, when I did some of that in my career, I helped the folks that I say goodbye to find someone who was going to help them, right? I didn't just send them a letter and say goodbye. I did it in a
See
very
ya.
mindful. Yeah, that's just not the way I work. So when
Yeah.
I did that, I literally had a handoff. We met the new person who's going to work with them at a different firm, and everything worked out well. In fact, I later talked to the other financial planner that I'd introduced to some of these folks, and I asked how some of my old clients are doing. And he goes, actually, I brought your name up to Carol the other day, Travis. And she goes, Travis, who? Right. So she's saying she forgot about me. And I said, that's great.
Yeah.
I am so glad now that you're giving them attention that I could not give them. They're in a better place. Everybody's growing, and it worked out well. Right. So again, if you're having a hard time making a business decision as with your listeners, take off the emotional hat for a second. What would you do if you were starting over from scratch? I ask myself that all the time.
Yeah.
And that is how you gain clarity in making non-emotional business decisions.
Yeah, for some reason in this conversation, I keep thinking about things that Brian Tracy says, and that's, find the 20% of your clients that are giving you 80% of your business, figure out who they are, like, what as create an avatar from them, and then go find more people that are like that, and, ditch the other 80. And the other thing he says is, knowing what you know now, if you had it to do over again, would you make this decision, or would you have hired that, would you have worked with that client or whatever, knowing what you know now, or with who you are today. And it's absolutely true. And it's not easy, but it's imperative, right? If you want
It
to
is.
meet your own goals.
You have to. You have to make tough decisions. Speaking
Yeah.
of tough decisions, if you're any of your listeners, because you mentioned you have a lot of entrepreneurs, maybe folks that are inspiring entrepreneurs, if your listeners are finding success at some point in whatever endeavor that they're involved in, I have found too many times people begin to create wealth, but not only is their net worth increasing, so is their lifestyle. And the lifestyle keeps exact pace with the growth that they have, and they really don't get anywhere, right? I once met somebody making $1 million a year, spending $1 million a year, and they weren't saving anything, right? The number one place that I find people get in trouble with this is they buy the home that's at the maximum of their budget. A home is either going to be your dream home that lets you accomplish your financial dreams, or it's going to be the thing that destroys your wealth over time. And that might sound harsh to say, but if you go to the bank, you apply for a mortgage, they go through all your information, do this underwriting, they go, great, here's how much house you can buy. And you buy that house. Well, usually I find that people don't have enough money to save for college for their kids, buy the insurance that they need. By the way, I'm not an insurance guy, but I believe that people should have certain types of insurance, right? Be able to have enough cash in the bank so that you and your spouse have cushion and you're not arguing. All these things go away if you crammed all this money into a house and maintenance for it, right? And then 30 years later, you've wasted all that time. Resist it, right? Resist it like crazy. Save as much as you can while you have the time. And one day, people may not be able to see the flashy car, the flashy house, but you'll be able to see what you have in the bank, and that gives you freedom to do what you want to do with your time.
That's so important. And, you know, Travis, because so many people think that their home is an investment. And I'm a real estate agent. I'm a real estate broker. Your home is not an investment if you're going to keep living someplace. It might be an investment for whoever you leave it to, but it's not really going to be one because you're going to sell it and buy something else. So get that idea out of your head. It's a boat anchor. It's sucking the life out of you. So take Travis's advice and just, you know, take the number they give you and at least reduce it by at least 25%.
You got it. That's wise words, right? And there aren't a lot of folks in the real estate world that would take that approach. So I commend you for that. I love home ownership, big believer in home ownership. Make sure it's just not over you're not getting over your skis. You know, that's the point.
Yeah, absolutely. So are there other, how about some sort of psychological, or I was talking to a guy the other day talking about how people who come from wealth, who have wealth, that they think differently than other people. Do you find that like the way that they approach a problem, the way that they approach a challenge in some ways is a little bit different?
Yeah. I'll give you a great example. Years ago, I had a client who worked in healthcare. And she said, I'm tired of having a W-2 job. I want to start a business. I want to start a dog grooming business because I love dogs. I care about it. I know people in the dog grooming industry. I said, great. So she had a business plan, quits her job. She has a certain amount of money she had saved up. She starts her business, the website, the marketing plan, legal documents, the property, all that. Not enough money was coming in after 6 months. Complete nervous wreck to the point she wasn't sleeping. Her eating habits were poor, and it was really taking a toll on her physical health.
Yeah.
After 6 months. Unfortunately, she couldn't stomach the risk anymore. She went back to work and lost all the money. So here's the thing. When I see the folks that have found success, they enter into something like that endeavor with the knowledge that it may not work out, but if that business folds, they're just going to do it again. Right? To your point, it's so the person who was stripped naked and they wound up in some country, they're going to figure out a way to become independent wealthy, right?
Yeah.
If you go down this path, you almost need to take a burn the boats mentality, right? Yeah. That this is the only way. If I'm going to do this, I'm not looking back, and failure is not an option.
Right.
Within reason. Otherwise, your very first setback might preclude you from ever getting on that path again. And little did you know, your very next venture or your very next quarter might be the one that gets you over the hump to success.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. I love that. Persistence. We're just going to keep on chugging. Failure is not an option.
In fact, I started a financial technology company years ago. I hired IT engineers. I'm not an IT guy. I don't know how to code, but I had a vision. I knew what I wanted, and I hired a team to build the thing. And unfortunately, I was given some advice that I didn't follow from someone else who had done something similar and sold it for an 8-figure sum. I should have, because I wasted a 6-figure amount of my own money in what we were building, right? But I didn't let that be an obstacle. I said, okay, we're going to pivot. There's going to be another option. And, you know, I've learned a lot from these things. So mistakes just happen. It doesn't matter how smart you are, where you went to college. The
Exactly.
mindset that you and I keep talking about, Christine, is just so crucially important in that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was a really expensive coaching session, but right. That
It
lesson I
was.
just learned by losing all my shirt on that company. Well, but I'll never do that again. So now what did I take away? Listen to people who know more than you.
That's right. It's exactly
Note
right.
to self. Yeah, definitely. Awesome. So I guess let's talk for just a second. I mean, we're kind of getting to the end and I want to make sure that you have time to say things because I've been doing all the talking. But about this balance between health and wealth and, making sure that your life is not just a whole, exhausting trail of just working yourself into the bone. I mean, how do you kind of begin to feel like, and this is a problem actually a lot of entrepreneurs deal with, where it's a side hustle or something. And how do you know that you actually can not work so much? How do you know that it is time to leave your job or something? Like what this idea of feeling secure with what you have financially and focusing on the good stuff.
Sure. So an exercise that I go through with folks a lot is creating a financial plan. Many people have plans, but if those only exist in their brain, right? When they want to retire, when they want to slow down, how they would change their business, it's not really a plan, it's a wish. So a true plan is one that you have documented out and it's projected out at least 10 years on what's going to change. The fun part about that exercise is I've met folks who go through that planning exercise and realize they're not on the path they thought they were. But the fun part is when I can serve as affirmation that someone is not only on the right path, they can actually spend more than they thought they could and retire 2 years earlier. Then we start getting into the fun part of, okay, if you enjoy what you do, is there a way that you could just reduce it, do it longer, and being able to travel, right? Because retirement, in my mind, it's sort of a mindset.
Yeah.
Right. If someone says, "Oh, I can't wait till I retire," I say, "Well, why?" I want to be able to travel more. I want to see my kids more. I'd love to be able to go fishing more. I go, great. Well, if you could take off 1 week every 4 to 6 months, every 4 to 6 weeks, take 1 week off and travel more and go see your kids and fish more. Is that about how much you would want? Yeah, I guess I probably wouldn't travel more than that if I was fully retired. Guess what? You could do that now. You could do that at 45 or 50. And if you had that lifestyle where you could carve out time to work out and eat the food you want and do the travel and see the kids, would you stop working? If I enjoy what I'm doing, I guess not. But all of a sudden you have this click in your mind where the stress is going away because you are now working by choice.
Right.
That is retirement in my mind. Retirement is working by choice, not by necessity. And that only comes about by doing a comprehensive financial plan to confirm that the ideas in your head actually match reality with math.
Yeah. And it's true because if you think like, well, I don't want to play golf 24/7. I don't want to sit around all the time and watch soap operas. I actually love working, but right. So that then retirement can start today. And because you're now going to be working longer, maybe you don't need to have as much saved or whatever. Maybe you can take some of that money that you thought you're going to need because you're going to stop working at, whatever age.
Right.
Yeah. It's so liberating.
Liberating is the perfect word for it. I once had a gentleman, he had never met a financial planner before. We come in, we do all this math about all these things he wants, and we look at it. And I say, John, I'm going to call him John for today. Okay. Say, John, here you are. Here's where you told me you want to go. You can actually retire today on the same lifestyle that you told me you want to live on. And he goes, no way, show me the math. And we went deeper into reports. And he sits back into my chair and goes, you're telling me the next time I go to a board meeting, if I don't like what's going on, I can tell everyone to, and he used an expletive I won't put on your show, F off. I go, yeah. He goes, oh my gosh. And this stress, I could see the stress melt away from the guy. And that is the most fun part of my job, right? But it only comes about from confirmation in all the math. But yeah, it's a liberating feeling.
Travis, so like I said, I've been doing all the talking. What is a question you wish I would have asked you that I was too busy blabbing on to ask you? What's something that you want to make sure people come away with, or did we already sort of talk about that in some other part?
I feel like we covered a lot. I mean, when you might ask, when should somebody really start the planning process, right? And
Like, when do you plant
hypothetically,
a tree, right?
yeah, if you ask me that, my answer would be, you don't need to get into real comprehensive planning when you're in your 20s. But if you don't do any, if you don't look at the trajectory of your career, if you don't look at the decisions you're making on home and vehicles, if you don't do any projection on what you're saving or doing with your life, you'll have no clue where you're going. It's like leaving on a ship from New York headed to London. You might point yourself in the right direction, but boy, if you're never really measuring where you're at, you're going to wind up somewhere else. You won't be in London, right?
Yeah.
And then you can't go back and say, "Oops, you're halfway across the world." So planning has to happen at any age, even if it's a simple financial calculator you use online. But by the time you really want to start a business or scale that business, or you're getting close to an important part of your life where you want to taper back and change your lifestyle, like you and I talked about, that's when the comprehensive math is really needed. Sometimes you go to a professional and they're going to say, "Hey, you got to pay me, $2,000 or $3,000 to do the math." If somebody ever says that, if they go to a planner and they say that, don't be surprised. It's kind of like hiring an attorney or an accountant, right? Some people will do it for free. Just make sure they're not trying to sell you insurance, and that's why they're doing it for free, right? But generally, from what I've found, that kind of math is well worth a $2,000 fee, because you might wind up with 6 figures more over time with some of those ideas, not to mention the tax planning concepts, right? And in my mind, tax planning isn't a year-to-year thing. I'm looking at it over a 10-year period of time. Over 10 years, the next 10 years, how can I reduce my taxes? Not just a single year, because accountants are trained that way. I look at it in a much broader scale.
Awesome. Travis, how can people reach you if they want to work with you, or if they just want to, I don't know, read your blog or something? Do you have a blog?
Yeah, so there's a site that has a link to the book and other articles on entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship. And they go to growthinfo.com, and everything will be right there on the front page.
Excellent. Excellent. And we'll put that in the show notes as well, so people can be sure to reach you. Thank you so much for being with us today. I love talking to you.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. Good to be here.
And thank you, listener, for listening. Hey, do you know anybody who would like to have more money than they do today? Do you know anybody who would like to have a good, solid financial trajectory, or even just to kind of start to think about money and where they're going to be later on? I bet you do. You might even know several of those people. So why don't you forward this episode to them, because they will thank you and we will thank you. And in the meantime, have a beautiful week, and we'll see you next week.